at some point within the next calendar year, I'm looking at making a Fabula Ultima character. My Legend of the Five Rings campaign will conclude, and one of the players in that campaign has said that afterwards, he will run a Fabula Ultima campaign, and I'm excited. I'm looking forward to this. And so every now and then, and it's kind of a long ways off, like we don't have an end point set for my campaign yet, so it's a ways away, but it's starting to become like a soonish thing. So every now and then I think about, like, what kind of character would I want to play? And I've had a few different possibilities. To be honest, the breadth of possibilities in Fabula Ultima is so nice that I have not yet been able to settle on, like, what do I want to play first? I have a few ideas, but I don't know if they'll pan out. Like, we'll just have to wait and see. Like, I'm not going to settle on any character concepts until, like, the day of. But thinking about how to build my Fabula character has gotten me to thinking about something that I've noticed happening when people learn new games. And it's something that I have noticed before, but I don't think I ever really, like, sat down and thought about it, how it's kind of weird a little bit. So what happens a lot of times is someone who is familiar with D&D, probably, or is maybe otherwise, let's say optimistically, familiar with various forms of, like, fantasy, sci-fi literature, and so they are familiar with a bunch of character concepts. And so they come to a new game. Let's say it's Fabula. Let's say it's D&D 4th edition. Let's say it's not Legend of the Five Rings, because that's pretty that's like a pretty specific vision. But this sort of, the generic fantasy type game, the game that isn't about a specific thing, and it kind of, like, gives the player some freedom to make lots of different character archetypes. Because let's be honest, in Legend of the Five Rings, which is a fantastic game, the character archetypes, you're assumed to all play samurai. There are other archetypes, but they are specific to the setting. You're not going to show up to the game thinking, well, I'm going to play a Thri-Kreen barbarian. Like, that's just not a thing. And going in, it's not a thing. No, I'm talking about generic fantasy games, D&D, Fabula, etc. And so they come in being like, well, I have this character concept in mind. Or if they're, let's say, not about to join a game, but they're just sort of examining it to see if they like it. Like, well, I want to play this character archetype. Can I do that in this game? And sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes the answer is no, depending on what exactly they're trying to do. Sometimes the archetype is very specific to D&D. Just recently, somebody in my server asked me, or just asked in general, if you can do how to describe it? A martial arts necromancer, I think it was, that's pretty specific. And, like, if you could do that in 4th edition, and, like, no, I don't think you can. There's, like, you can kind of, like, touch on those themes a bit, but no, not really. For various reasons, you can't. And then you have people who have played Pathfinder, who join a D&D game, and they're like, well, I want to do this thing that I did in Pathfinder. And it has struck me as kind of strange, and like, every time it happens, I balk at the idea. I kind of, like, psychologically, I bristle up at it, like, well, I feel like now I have to find a way to fulfill this fantasy, or else my game that I like is failing them in some way that other games did not fail them. And so, if I can't replicate every, 5th edition D&D character or every Pathfinder 2nd edition character in whatever game I'm recommending, if I can't do that, it feels like a failure. And it feels like that is a weakness of the game that I'm recommending. And so, like, just sort of naturally, just psychologically, I don't like it when this happens. Sometimes it's easy. Like, if I can do it, then yeah, sure, you can do that. And in fact, it's better in my game. Of course it is. Of course it always is, right? But I have recently thought about why I don't like it. And I think what it really comes down to is just a different psychological approach, because I don't do this. This is not something that I do when I'm approaching a new game or when I'm examining a new game. I can't think of a single time when I've ever approached a game going, well, okay, no, actually, I'll take it back. There is one exception. I'll get to that in just a moment. With an exception, there's not been a single time when I approach a game thinking already knowing what I want to do, right? When I am approaching a new game, I look at the player options and I let those inspire me. I say, that looks neat. I want to do that. You know, I'm the guy who walks up to a McDonald's, looks at the menu and says, I want that one. That looks good. Not at McDonald's anymore. I don't eat at McDonald's for a variety of reasons. But you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. I'm looking at the menu at a restaurant, like, that looks really good. I want that. And I don't go into the restaurant thinking, I know what I want. Let's see if they can make it for me. And I'm not saying that, like, going in with predetermined expectations or desires for a specific character fantasy is wrong in any way. It's not. Like, it's clearly the way a lot of people approach RPGs. It's just not the way I approach it. And as a result, when I experience that, I have found that it is sort of a matter of pride. Like, I feel like I have to fulfill this fantasy that they are wanting to have fulfilled by the game that I'm recommending or advocating for. Particularly if the alternative for that player is 5th edition or Pathfinder, which I kind of want to, like, pull people away from. Particularly pull people away from 5th edition. Pathfinder, like, yeah, whatever, it can just kind of exist over here in the corner. I don't care. I'm nothing on Pathfinder. I neither like nor dislike it. So, I just thought that was an interesting thing to have observed, that this difference in approach between, like, knowing what you want and seeing if the game can accommodate it, and seeing what the game has and deciding what I want based on that. It's like diametrically opposite approaches, and it's interesting that I don't know. I guess it's just interesting to me because I hadn't thought about it before today. Like, literally just a few minutes ago, I was like, that's super interesting. I want to talk about that video. Now, the one exception that I mentioned is when I did some playtesting in Pathfinder 2nd edition for their new commander class, which is sort of like quasi-warlordy kind of a class. I definitely went into that playtest with expectations. I expected to be able to do certain kinds of things, and the class failed to deliver. I was deeply disappointed. Is the class bad? I don't know. Probably not. There were a few parts of it that definitely felt powerful. Like, my initiative bonus was really, really high. I had some, it felt to me like I had fairly decent, like, healing output, party support. It just wasn't the kind of fantasy that I was looking for. And as a result, it failed to meet my expectations. And I kind of blamed the commander class for that. And I think maybe that was unfair. Within the class design paradigm of Pathfinder, it's probably fine. Might be even good. I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with Pathfinder to say for sure. But I know that I was disappointed because I came in with pre-existing expectations that this class would be as cool and as powerful and as dynamic as the warlords that I used to play in 4th edition. And it for sure is not. But that's just sort of endemic to the way Pathfinder is. Like, characters in Pathfinder just aren't as cool or as powerful or as dynamic as their 4th edition equivalents. So that was perhaps unfair of me, but I think it's the only time I can think of that I've ever come into a game expecting a very specific kind of play experience based on a different game. That I'm like carrying those forward and saying, all right, game B, let's see if you can do what game A does instead of just going and playing game A. Like, right, that's clearly the better solution, right? Whenever possible. Obviously, it's not always possible. But anyways, yeah. I don't know if this even qualifies as an opinion per se. Like, can I call this an opinion? It's just an observation, really. Is there an opinion in here? Is there an opinion hidden in here? Can I make an opinion out of this? I can say that they're different. It is my opinion that the opposite things are different from each other. That's my opinion. Call me wrong.